Welcome to another edition of Old School. I'm Steve Corino, and sitting to my left is a true wrestling legend in the world of our wacky world of professional wrestling, Kevin Sullivan. Thank you for joining me on this edition. And I like to tell everybody it's two wrestlers bullshitting. You know, we'll have fun for a couple of hours and stuff like that, and stuff that we were just talking about off the air, we'll get into. But the first thing I want to know is, like, you know, I tell this to everybody too, is I fell in love with wrestling when I was 8 years old. It was something I knew right from the moment I saw it. I don't know why, but I knew that's what I wanted to do and stuff like that. When did you know you wanted to be a professional wrestler?
The first time I saw professional wrestling on television.
Do you remember how old you were?
I was about 8, and I knew I wanted to be a pro wrestler. I used to, I actually booked matches with myself, going over everybody. Ray Stevens, you know, I had a booker's mentality back then.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was beating Ray Stevens at the Cow Palace, and then flying to Boston and beating Kilogorski. So, yeah, I've been a big fan of wrestling, and there's a word I cannot stand that wrestlers use it quite a bit, and the word is mark.
Right.
I cannot stand that because that means I'm a mark too, because I mark out for the work, I mark out for the guys' ability. So it's like they get this inside joke that they're pulling something over on people that are paying their paycheck.
Yeah.
I think that's shits, you know what I mean?
No, it's getting into wrestling. When you did, wrestling was so protected and stuff like that. And then when they would use that mark word, do you feel like a lot of guys that would say that were like ashamed of what they did, or they didn't want people to know that, like, hey, you know what, I love what I do?
Yeah, it was that the business was so protected, but as we've mentioned before, Steve, I'm a historian. I love history. I love history of everything. World War I, the Ottoman Empire. I get up every morning and read a history book. And I know the history of wrestling because I was fortunate enough to have some great mentors who told me things that not many people know. But the wrestling business comes from the carnival business,
right,
where there would be a ringer, and it was a wrestler, right? And then you and I would have a match, and I'd beat you.
Right.
But there'd be money bet on the side. So all of a sudden, I'd be the favorite, right? And so now the betting line would go 2 to 1, you against me.
Right.
All of a sudden, there's a big hayseed kid in the crowd from, Fort Wayne, Indiana,
Right,
who's 300 pounds, been lifting bales of hay. So the wrestler would have enough ability to be able to maneuver the guy around, and there was a curtain behind the ring, and the guy would be there with some kind of foreign object, right, whether a crowbar or a hammer, and hit him in the head and knock him out, and the wrestler would pin him. Yeah.
Wow.
So we evolved from the carnival.
Right.
So the word, the kayfabe and the lingo and the word mark and just our language was carried over, and it was carried over for quite a while. And in the early days of wrestling, they protected the business because they were projecting it as a sport.
And that's so they could bet on it, right?
Well, betting on it, but then after a while, people got smart that it was an exhibition. But they would say, well, and I never figured this out, and I was one of them that would say, well, I know all those matches are fake, but when Bruno wrestles, that's a real match.
Right.
Well, how did Bruno have a real match and the rest of them fake? But there was always one guy that was the guy. And the other thing was, in those territories back then, and I said this to a friend of mine, Chris, was if an opposition started, we'll say in Florida, they would send the toughest guys from the company down. And they'd get in a fight with these guys.
Right.
And they would end opposition.
Right.
Okay.
Almost like a mafia mentality, right?
It was
Yeah.
a mafia mentality, and it was, we're going to hurt these guys, and very seldom did anybody have the balls to continue to do it. A few did, okay? And after a while, the few that did continue, because the limited number of guys that would do that, they were repeating matches and over and over, so they would burn out themselves.
Right.
So that's how I think the word mark came. Glad that that is kind of, the kayfabe is kind of stopped, but they've gone too far.
Right.
My thing is, if you've ever been to see Siegfried and Roy, you know that that tiger that appears in the audience didn't appear there magically.
Right.
But you don't know how the hell they did it,
Right.
And you think, and it's entertaining. But they've turned the box around when you're cutting the girl in half, and you see the girl, okay?
Yeah.
Pulling up her legs, contortionist. So we've gone too far that way, because some people don't even call them wrestlers anymore.
Right.
It's lost it's lost its ability to be taken, that it's a somewhat a sport. When you keep on exposing, it takes, even these guys today, the athletes today that are in wrestling are probably much better than my generation.
Right.
And much better than the generation prior to this, except for a few, and much better than the generation before and everything else. It's evolved. But because they know now that nobody's real, it's
They
kind of
don't have to
lost its
believe it,
edge.
yeah.
Okay, I'll give you an example. I wrestled from our time I was 10 years old. I knew that when I went to a wrestling match, and I love professional wrestling, that it was impossible to throw a guy into the ropes.
Yeah.
You know, if you break it down, everything becomes stupid. You know,
Yeah.
You know
When
what
you
I mean?
send a guy, why would he turn,
Yeah.
hit the rope? Yeah.
And the other thing is, you bail a guy out of the corner, and that was from a guy named Frank Beal. Okay, so you bail a guy out of the corner. You know you can't bail a guy out of the corner.
Yeah.
And back in the day when we were kids, the guys looked like they were 270 pounds. They probably weren't, but they could pull a guy down by his tights.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was things. It's the suspension of disbelief.
Right.
Okay, so if you were good at it, you could get away with it. But one of the things that shook me to my core, and I was lucky to meet him, lucky to work with him, lucky to be a friend of his, was the original Sheik. He came to the Boston Gardens and sold it out and wrestled Bruno. Well, people have asked me, who do you think the best world heavyweight champion is? Most people say Flair. Not disrespecting Flair, but Bruno had a presence when he walked down the aisle.
Right.
That he was the real world champion. Okay?
Right, and he, and like for people that didn't grow up in the Northeast, Boston,
Right.
Washington D.C., Philadelphia, New York, you have 5 huge cities that
Toronto
that Vince McMahon Sr. would go to, but you also had like 5 different ethnicities. There was but Bruno, was over with him being from Italy, was over with the Italians in New York,
Right.
but he was also over with with the Irish in
Right,
Boston,
right,
he
right,
would
right.
be over with everybody. And for some reason, I was more the Backlund era, when I started watching wrestling, and I never could get that emotional attachment.
Right.
But everybody says that Bruno was. Like, you were emotionally invested in Bruno. Do you know why? Would you know why? Was it or
Yeah, because he looked like a pro wrestler. He looked like the world's champion. And here's the thing: when I grew up, the line had been kind of severed a little, because I'm second generation. Okay, my grandfather came from Ireland. Okay, he took my dad to the matches. And the champions for him were Dan O'Mahony, Steve Crush Casey, who I was related to. The Irish had their heroes.
Yeah.
Then the Italians had Frankie Scarpa. and Argentina Rocket.
Rocket, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the Polish had the Stanley brothers because they knew they were Polish. So you had a melting pot. As neighborhoods disappeared and intermarriage came, and things evolved.
Right, the neighborhoods are integrating.
And so you got to like the Italian. I would probably boo back in the day. Now crush a Casey if he was going to wrestle Bruno, but when the Sheik came out to wrestle Bruno, and now I knew it was all bullshit.
Yeah.
And in 1953, I was watching Superman. It was about a wrestler who was from India, was a shooter, and he was beating all the wrestlers. Now the promoters get nervous because he doesn't want him to be the champion because he doesn't have anybody to beat him, right? So they locked the wrestler into this room so he can't have the title match, so they're going to substitute it. Lo and behold, this is 53.
Yeah.
Superman knocks down the wall. The guy runs to the ring and puts his finishing hold on the guy and beats him. And the promoter, and I always think of UFC after this, promoter runs out and says, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. It'll be the next big thing. Real wrestling. Real wrestling.
Oh,
That
even
was
then in
back
53.
then. Yeah, see, and I was sure the Sheik was. The building actually moved.
Really?
The vibration was completely different. The building shook. I mean, people, it was like back in when I used to go to the Boston Gardens, the magic number for a solid was 13,909. Okay? When he came out through that door, there were 13,909 people that wanted to shit in their pants. They were so scared of him. And when he jumped Bruno and chopped Bruno with the spike and blood, I was sitting there saying, I don't give a shit what anybody says. This guy's real.
Yeah.
So we had this thing, well, and even as a kid, people say, do you believe in wrestling? No, I don't believe in wrestling. And then the Sheik's name would come up. Oh, but the Sheik's real. You know that. That guy can't even talk English. And look what he did to Bruno last time.
Right.
Not realizing he didn't beat Bruno because Bruno got counted out on the floor. Right?
Yeah.
He kept the belt. So we were captivated that it could have been real.
Yeah.
It could have been real. That match could have been real. So if that match could have been real, and then one time I went to the Gardens and Dickie Steamboat and Dory Dixon, you may not know who they are.
I know both names, yeah.
They had a babyface match for 15 minutes that wooed the people because in the Northeast, as you know, there wasn't high spots, right? It was just grab a hold and right. They did this,
and it was a big guy territory too, yeah.
The people went crazy, and I bought that match. So even though I knew, I always compare Christmas as you're 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mom and Dad put the presents in the closet. You've kind of looked in the closet. But you want to believe one more year that it's legit.
Yes.
That Santa Claus is coming down. So you keep it out of your mind that you saw them. And then Santa's coming. And you put the cookies out. You go along with the work.
Yep.
You're part of the work. You're part of the entertainment. Oh, Mama, can I leave the milk out? It's the
fun part,
it's
yeah.
The fun part.
I tell people that all the time. They'll be like, that wrestling stuff you do, isn't that fake? I go, are you Christmas shopping right now? Like, were you doing that just to celebrate Christ's birthday? Or are you doing it because Santa Claus is coming?
Right.
Oh, well, my kids believe in Santa. Yeah, because you want to believe in Santa Claus.
Right.
If you just relaxed a little bit and just let your, stop overthinking and just get yourself emotionally involved,
Right.
Now, you said growing up in wrestling, we were talking before we went on the air of that, you had said wrestling was made for television.
Right.
Now, before we get into that, I want to say wrestling, I guess it was right around the Depression era. Didn't they go through their first scandals then? Of like guys trying to expose wrestling?
There was a guy that wrote a book called The Harder They Fall. You can still get it.
Yeah?
Okay? What happened was he had a guy that was disgruntled. Mm-hmm. And the guy's name was Jack Pfeffer.
Right, Pfeffer.
Okay, Pfeffer would come into the territory, and he would rent a building, and he'd have Bruno Sammartino,
Yeah.
Bobby Rogers. So people would say it must be a misprint, right?
Yeah.
And they go, and there wouldn't be anything, and he started to kill people's territories. So they would pay him off, okay, and get rid of him. So the thing that they did then was they decided, okay, we're going to have to control this somehow, okay? We're going to have to control this because at that time, the wrestlers controlled the wrestling business. They got a promoter and said, hey, you want to promote Boston? You're going to get 10% or 20%.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to promote St. Louis, you're going to get 10 to 20%. In 1948, the NWA was formed. If you look at it, and I'm a history buff,
Yeah.
it's the only time management has had a union and labor hasn't.
Wow, I never thought of that. You know, for you read it, you're like, oh, this is where all the promotions got together. Oh, that makes so much sense. The way you're saying it is that's when they got together and said, we got to put the boys down, you know,
right.
and made it a promoter's game.
And they made it a promoter's game. And then too, when the Dumont Network came about, what happened would be, it was Wrestle from the Marigold Arena, then Hollywood Bowl,
Right.
and then Texas Wrestling. Well, Texas Wrestling was kind of it would be hardcore wrestling today.
Right.
And
Now, was that Amarillo or was it Dallas?
It was both.
Okay.
Okay. And it was, I believe, Houston also.
Yes.
So, believe it or not, they had shoot commissions back then.
Mm-hmm.
And the referees weren't smart. Okay?
Really?
Pepper Gomez came into Madison Square Garden, and back in Texas, you could throw the referee over the ropes because he was one of the boys, right? Pepper Gomez was working the main event, and he's in the corner, just make a little comeback, you know, after getting some heat. Just a little comeback. Referee steps in the middle, Pep pushes him, he gets disqualified on a sellout. So
On just a push, yeah.
Just a push.
Yeah.
You know, you can't touch this guy. He is not smart to the business. So when the little regional territories opened up, again with the Bedlam from Boston, you had local stars, but you had national stars. And the national stars were controlled by Jim Barnett, who had Wrestling from Marigold. He would send the guys to make the cards super cards.
Right.
Now,
And then the undercard would be more the local guys.
and they would always have 4 or 5 local guys over right? Because these stars will say on Friday night on Saturday night they were in Boston. Friday night they were in Toronto. Okay, the guys that the local guys weren't. A few of them may go to Toronto, maybe 1 or 2. But the rest of the guys had a draw in Revere, Massachusetts, or Lowell, Massachusetts. So they had to have come off an angle from their TV.
Yeah.
So we draw. Now, they're not drawing 13,909. They're in a building that seats 2,000 people.
Right.
So that's what happened. And then, as I told you off camera, the quiz show scandal came about.
Right. I was amazed at this. People will too.
Okay.
Well, the quiz shows are in. Now, was this the quiz shows were like nationwide? Now, they had a huge scandal around this time too, right?
Right. Now, here's what happened. Geritol, if you watch the movie, and the guy's name was Van Doren, Charles Van Doren. His father was a very famous author from Columbia University. Charles Van Doren was a professor at Columbia. Well, the guy, you you ever watch the movie? The guy knew all the answers.
Yeah, it's quiz show, right?
Yeah,
quiz show.
Yeah, it was actually they called it the quiz show. It was the $64,000 question.
Yeah, the movie was the quiz show.
Yeah. Well, this one guy knew all the answers, but he didn't have Charles Van Doren's look. Charles Van Doren was really the first made-for-TV star.
You're right.
Handsome guy. came from an educated family from the Mayflower, for Christ's sake.
Wow,
Okay?
Americana.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And here we have a Jewish guy from Brooklyn, right, that speaks Brooklynese.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very
Brooklynese.
smart, but Charles Van Doren fit the picture. Now, Geritol was the only sponsor. They owned the show.
Mm-hmm.
So they got together and said, we're going to sell a lot more Geritol with Charles Van Doren than this guy. So they set up the questions for Charles Van Doren to win. He probably would have won eventually, but they made sure he won. Okay,
Right.
And then the other guy went and he blew the whistle, and there was a national committee about the scandal on television, because you got to remember too, TV's in its infancy. They don't want any of this, that
They want everything real, yeah.
they want everything real. They don't want the public to be frauded in any way. Well, as they're drawing up what they're not going to allow on TV, wrestling came up. The promoters got together and they hired Nick Goulas, who's the promoter in Tennessee, to give Saul Estes, the senator from Tennessee, $100,000. As they're drawing this up, they cross the line through it, and Estes says, well, everybody knows wrestling's fake. We don't have to do that. If that line didn't go through, wrestling may not have never gone
Would
on
never
TV.
made it, yeah. Now, do you
TV.
believe that, so Nick Goulas doesn't pass the money?
Yeah,
And they say, whoa, wrestling
is off.
is off. Would it have gone back to the carnival days, or do you think it would have just kind of
It would have
faded a little bit?
It would have gone back to when it had evolved from the carnival days to people running shows like independents with no television.
Right.
Once television came, and people don't understand. You know how you got a cell phone in your pocket, you can pull up anything?
Yeah.
People have been listening to the radio.
Yes.
So Amos and Andy were two white guys, okay? Baseball, you heard it from Vince Scully, you know what I mean? You were hearing things, but you weren't seeing them.
Even the programs like War of the Worlds, or
Absolutely, caused a riot,
yeah,
right?
people, even though they said it, I
Yeah.
remember driving, I had the CD. I'm like, I really want to see how this goes. They would tell you, this is just a program, but they were so wrapped up into it, they didn't see it.
And what happened was people were tuning in late, a couple of minutes late, and it was, this is just a program, it's a story. And people turned in too late, and all of a sudden, there was chaos in New Jersey because that's where they supposedly landed
Yep.
at first. People were running, moving out of New Jersey, the whole thing. I think wrestling would have gone back to independent shows until maybe the Kennedy era.
Okay.
Because I have a theory that when Kennedy was killed, the country went a different way. Okay, and they killed John Kennedy, Ted Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X,
Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe.
You say Marilyn Monroe too? Yeah.
Tried
to invade Cuba.
Yeah,
It was a different. It was a
And
changing of the world.
And the other thing about Cuba, I always say, is Fidel Castro, right? He came to. I saw Fidel. I was from here to there. My dad was a Boston cop, and he spoke at Harvard. If Fidel Castro could have hit a curveball, he would have played for the Washington Senators.
Right, and I also read the Pittsburgh Pirates were interested in him. Yeah.
Okay, if he hit a curveball, we would never had a problem. I saw him, and Eisenhower was president, and he turned him down. He said, "No, I'm not going to do it." There's only two stores, us and the Soviet Union. So he went to work for the Soviet Union, supposedly. My contention is, if there's a revolution and the country drives out your ambassadors, everybody, and supposedly he's putting missiles that can short-range missiles,
90 miles.
Okay. Why would we have a base in Guantanamo Bay?
Right.
If the Russians had a base in Kansas City, would we be upset?
Right. My other thing is that I'm a Canadian citizen too,
Right.
Americans only see Cuba as poor and everything like that. But you ask any Canadian, hey, where are you going on vacation? Going to Cuba. And it is absolutely gorgeous, and people are, it's so weird seeing
Yeah, my friend's is English, but he's a tax exile. That means you pay 90% of your tax for 5 years of your money, 90% of it, and then you don't pay taxes in England again. But you're only allowed in the country 90 days, and you have to give up if you're a CEO and stuff like this. But there's a way around it. You give your daughter the credit card to use in Spain, because in Spain you don't have to pay taxes for your tax exile, and you jump on the channel and you let your wife drive, and they only check the driver. Okay.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, but my thing is, if this was a true revolution, how do we have a base there?
Right.
There's things were shady, and that's what I love about the '60s. Is it was shady. I think wrestling would have came back on, and you're from the Northeast. You may remember this when Vince Sr. in the '70s used to put up a slide before the wrestling came on and said, "This is an exhibition for professional wrestling. Take it as you want to take it."
I remember that. I remember first watching that.
Yeah, he was telling you that this is an exhibition. If you want to believe it, it's your right to believe. If you don't want to believe it, you don't have to believe it. And no one, are you going to read that? It's like watching a test pattern. You're not gonna watch it. You're waiting.
Watching,
for the first match. You're going to get a beer
Yeah.
and sit down and watch wrestling. And I think, it would have came back. And I also believe that when it was exposed, at first everybody was horrified. I mean, we all were. Oh, how could they do this? How could they do this? They actually opened the door where it was cool to say you were a wrestling fan. I'll give you an example. When wrestling was tight, I started at 18. I'm a 20-year-old kid, and I'm in Tennessee, and I belong to a health club. Not a gym, a health club. So I finished everybody's playing racquetball. I'm probably one of the 2 people lifting a weight. And I go into the sauna. So I'm sitting in the sauna, and in come 4 guys, And you can tell they're on their lunch break, and they're obviously successful because, it's like 1:15, they should be back to work, right? And they say, "You play football?" "No." "You work out a lot?" I said, "Yeah." "Well, why do you work out so much?" "Well, it's for my job." "Well, what's your job?" "A professional wrestler." 5 minutes after I tell them that, they're telling me what happened on TV last week. Everybody was a closet wrestling fan. When we exposed the business, we made it cool to be a wrestling fan again. So let's bring the kiddies.
Yeah.
It was directed at kids, right? Cartoons in the morning. Ice creams, lunch boxes.
Yeah.
Okay, it was directed.
T-shirts in small sizes. Yeah.
Say your prayers and take your vitamins.
Absolutely.
I don't know how the vitamins fit in the vial, but pretty cool. Say your prayers and take your vitamins. And then all of a sudden, as time, and everybody was a bigger than life character. There were superheroes and supervillains, right?
Yep.
Then all of a sudden, another company appears, and a guy named Bill Goldberg wrestles Mongo McMichaels with red shoes on, red tights, and an Atlanta Falcon jacket. And Mongo beats him because he stole his Super Bowl ring. The guy that sees him get beat says, "I made a huge mistake. Let's take this guy and take him off TV for 3 months." This was when Tyson was a killer.
Yeah.
Let's put him in the Tyson boots, the real short tights, and a towel. And let's shave his head because he had a little hair. And let's have him just go kill people because he doesn't have a lot of technical ability yet, but he looked real.
He had the presence. Yep. He had background.
A
Now,
month-
this is you that created Goldberg.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he did it himself. I
Yeah.
gave him the idea, and he made it bigger than life.
Yeah.
I go to the building 2 hours ahead of time because we used to have to be there 2 hours ahead of time. People are in the building chanting Goldberg.
Mhm.
I didn't have to pipe anything in like some people did. Some smaller companies would pipe stuff in.
Right.
My friends, and they're smart. But this guy was a phenomenon. And the reason why he's a phenomenon, I don't give a shit. Everybody thought he was the toughest son of a bitch on the
Yep.
face of earth. They might have said, "Oh, this wrestling's fake," but when this guy, and when he tackled you, he
Yeah.
tackled you, and when he jackhammered you, he jackhammered you.
Right.
It wasn't like, he went boom, and you said, "That had to hurt. I don't care."
Oh,
That hurt.
shit! 16 years, 17 years later, like I was just getting into in the wrestling when Goldberg's making maybe in like 3 years, and I'm thinking, I was already doing jobs for WWF. I'm like, and guys would be like, "Oh, do you want to go down to Tampa or down to Orlando?" And I used to think like, I know I'm so small, man. Goldberg could kill me. Like he'll just kill me. Like, and
Yeah.
there was a few guys at that time that, I mean, he had the most presence,
Right.
but Steiner's stuff like that. You thought even as a wrestler, this guy's gonna kill me. I'm not saying this because you're here, and I was gonna get into it later. You like first time I saw you, it's George Championship, and we're jumping ahead. It's George Championship Wrestling. You are babyface. You're cut. You had just done, and they even were putting over the bodybuilding contests and stuff like that. And I would get the magazines, and you're jacked and everything like that, and you're a good guy and stuff like that. And the next time I see you, I'm in. It's 2 years later, and I'm in Florida on vacation. Now I've read Kevin Sullivan go, and I'm just seeing you eat up every television guy to the point where, and it wasn't like everybody else. It was, I mean, you would come in, you would charge, it was the knee, it was the chops, you'd pick the guy up and just, I mean, you would manhandle this guy to the point where I thought, man, that, everything else is just what you were saying, this guy's real. When he stomps on your stomach, like, how do you fake that? My sister at 50 pounds was jumping on my stomach and it hurt like shit, right? So, yeah, that to me was like, and then when all of a sudden the devil and all the holy shit, like it was so big. And even later on with the Taskmaster and everything, right before I broke in '94, but like you right in '90, you got that transition from NWA to WCW. You and Buzz Sawyer are a team, just kicking the shit out of everybody. And I'm thinking, oh man, like the Samoan SWAT team are a big, huge team. The team I'm scared of is Kevin Sullivan, Buzz Sawyer, because to me, and it was guys like you guys. Sawyer was always like that, but Rick and Scott, and later on Goldberg is, man, even being in the business, it's all bullshit. That guy right there, I don't want to be in the ring with him. I'm scared.
I'll tell you a couple of stories real quick. We'll get back. The reason why I worked the way I worked was God knew what he was doing. Didn't make me 6'3", 270 pounds. I was a magic act.
Mm-hmm.
I was like the Sheik. Boom. If you didn't watch me, I was gone. The bell was rung, and there was a guy laying there in a pool. You better pay attention to what I'm doing. And I didn't do that much, And the other thing, I've always been criticized by all the guys starting to criticize me tonight. He said, him take a bump? Are you kidding me? You got that on film? It ain't him. It ain't him. We'll laugh about it. Because I always projected myself this way. Did you ever see the original Alien?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
here's a guy got the alien inside him, right? And he's sitting there, he starts to vibrate. And he pops out, the alien, right? Scares the shit out of you. He starts to run down the corridor or whatever he's running on the table, right? The alien is this big. Why don't someone take a fly swatter and hit him? But he became huge, right? Or did he? Or is it their perception that he was huge?
Right.
Was he still this little thing? So I got that from the Sheik. But
I was just about to ask when you had said how the influence.
We all steal.
Yeah.
And he was the master. And you can talk to Terry Funk, guys that I really admire, and I admire their longevity and their work. Terry stole everything from the Sheik. Abdullah stole
Yeah.
everything from the Sheik. Brody stole everything from the Sheik. Mark Lewin stole everything from the Sheik. I stole everything from the Sheik. The guys today, I would say that Tommy Dreamer is close to stealing stuff from the Sheik, but he's made it, you know.
Yeah, he's made it the baby face way.
Yeah, he's made it the babyface way. But I got a story to tell you about Steiner. People used to say that I was stiff. I wasn't stiff, I was snug. But on TV, I'll tell you a story about why I was maybe a little bit more aggressive. Some of the guys didn't wrestle full time.
Right.
They had regular jobs. So I wasn't the booker then. Somebody booked me with this kid. Nice enough boy, but this is my job. Okay, this is how I feed my family. And he comes up to me and says, this is right out of the wrestler. He says, I work in a meat market. He said, don't worry, I'm going to take it easy on you. He said, when I get tomorrow, I'll tell them I wrestled you and you're really a cool guy. I said, okay.
What territory is this?
This is in Florida.
Okay.
The bell rings, and I've never hit the ring that fast. I threw him out, I took a chair, and this was wrong, and I regret it. But I hit him in the head, and I gave him 17 stitches. Because I knew he was going back to that store. And if he told someone that I was full of shit, they were going to say, no, you're full of shit.
Yeah.
Because I was feeding my family. He had a job.
Right.
I couldn't afford, because when he said that, he said it in front of my boss, okay? And my boss looked at me like, okay, let's see what happens. And I passed the test. I mean,
And
that
Eddie
was
Graham,
way...
Eddie Graham
yeah,
was the boss, yeah.
It was way too much. I regret that I did it. But I'll tell you this story about Steiner. My neck is screwed because of him. Rick and I are good friends. He's a great guy,
Yeah.
but he's stiff. I mean, he didn't know his own strength. He was a freak.
Exactly.
I go in the gym, he's doing behind the neck presses with 315 seated for reps, like 15 reps. I'm looking, what? So, of course, he's with the Varsity Club. We turn him babyface, huge babyface.
Yeah.
On TV, so I book him against me in Boston Gardens. This was the year the Pistons beat the Celtics for the championship.
So this is 89,
Yeah.
right? Yep.
So I sent, usually the heel goes out first, right?
Yeah.
I sent Steiner out first, right? It's my hometown.
Yeah.
I said, I think I should go out. He said, why are you sending? I said, I'll get more heat because you're a babyface. I sent
You
him,
already knew what you were doing, right?
yeah. I send him out, and he's doing the, woo, 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 and listen to the, the fly, right?
Yeah.
Place goes crazy for him. Marvin Hagler is sitting in the front row with his kid. And I have the announcers say, here he comes now down the aisle, the dog-faced gremlin from Detroit, the home of the new NBA World Basketball Champions, right? I'm right behind him before that's out of the guy's mouth. And here he comes now from the home of the greatest franchise of all times, the Boston Celtics. He's in the corner. Steam is coming out of his ears. I said, boy, I really fucked myself with this one. Bell rings, he comes over. He hit me so hard, shot me in with a clothesline, that I went actually over the top. He said I never took a bump. You can look at this one. I took a bump over the top. I was out on my feet when I landed. The only thing that came to, if you ever box, you can get knocked out, then you get hit again, you come to. I hit the floor and I came to, and as I come up, there's Marvin Hagler in front of me. I said, Marvin, us Boston boys got to stick together. Get in there and get him. He looks down at me and says, brother, you're on your own. And that was a shoot. I mean, and we were talking about it tonight. I mean, he was so believable.
Yeah.
And so strong. It was very hard if you were booking to come up a way to beat those guys.
Right,
It
because going into I don't mind flip flop. We don't have to go in an order.
Yeah.
Now, when you're booking and your booking expertise is, second to none. You WCW was, what was it, 104 straight weeks, on top.
96.
96. I was close.
I'm not supposed to say that. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but
Gets me a lot of heat.
how hard is it, as a booker, to beat a guy that's, that the fans see as legit, like, a Goldberg, a Rick, a Scott,
Okay.
How hard is it because that they're thinking, well, I know he's got to lose sometimes, but not to that guy.
Okay, the Goldberg, when he got beat,
Yeah.
they came to me and said, they said to me, we got to beat Goldberg because we're afraid he's going to turn heel. He's won too much. I said, will you do me a favor? This is 143 wins.
Yeah.
I said, will you do me a favor? Will you come with me for a walk? 2 hours before showtime, we're in the Dome in Atlanta. Free TV.
Yeah.
Okay? I said, can you take a look at this house? Because I had done my homework.
Yeah.
I smelled something that night, right?
Yeah.
I said, can you take a look at this house? I said, yeah, it's a good house. I said, there's over 43,000 before we've opened. We got 2 hours left to go. We got $1 million house.
Yeah.
I said,
On a Monday night.
and you want to beat him? I said, we're going to go over $1 million. And you want to beat him? Well, yeah, we got to beat him because somebody got in their ear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So I said, they gave me this finish, the taser, the taser, the handcuff. Horseshit, it was the thing to kill him. They wanted to kill him. So I went to Bill and I said, this isn't my idea. If you got any stroke at all, I want you to do this finish.
Right.
There's no way they're not going to beat you. But do this. Have him out on his feet. Kick the shit out of him. Have him out. And this is when Bill was starting to put in ultimate fight moves.
Yep.
Remember?
Yeah.
I said, give him a kick in his leg. Everybody knows he's had a bunch of knee operations. I said, give him a kick in the leg and give him a high kick. You'll have to reach high and give him a high kick so he staggers in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
I said, then back up and go for your tackle. The guy's going to collapse. You're going to go over him, hit the post. The guy is going to just roll you up. No pulling the tights, no feet on the rope. 1, 2, 3. And I was over. They said, well, how could, that isn't getting beat. I said,
And that's a clean finish.
I said,
yeah.
Anybody will buy that he missed the tackle. 143 weeks he's hit the guy with a tackle.
Yeah.
I said, and I'm a big sports fan, right? I said, Barry Bonds hit 73 home runs that year, I think was that. No, it was the year McGuire hit 70, right?
Yep.
I said, McGuire hit 70 home runs. He didn't hit 163 home runs. That meant he missed over half the games that he played. He didn't hit a home run. People will buy that he hit the post, right? No, he's got to get tasered. He got handcuffed, tasered, and the Atlanta Falcons ran in the ring, and they held the Atlanta Falcons off.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that.
Well, I said to myself, they just killed the goose that laid the golden egg. And it kept on going down, and more people got in the air, and there was a match in Frisco, and he wrestled a guy that was over, and I liked the guy, but he wasn't Bill Goldberg.
Right.
The guy gave Bill Goldberg his finish. They were both laid in the middle of the ring for 10 seconds. Goldberg beat him to the feet and gave him, the tackle and jackhammer.
Yeah.
If it ain't broke, why fix it?
Right.
It's like, I equate it a lot to baseball.
Yeah.
David Ortiz hit 650, right? He would have hit
World Series
700 if that. I'm not politically correct, okay? This is no disrespect to the Latin community. I love them, but if that spick didn't reach over and steal a grand slam for us, I'm still pissed at that. Okay? He would have hit 700. Ortiz doesn't play the field,
Yes.
but he played in St. Louis
Yep.
because you got to ride the horse that brought you there.
Right.
This guy over $1 million, and they said to me, "We want to beat them." I thought they were ribbing me at first. You know, I was laughing. I said, "Oh yeah, yeah." I said, "Yeah, why don't we do that?" And I said, "If the Mulkeys were here, we'd double switch. We'd do the evil Mulkeys." They said, "No, we're beating them." And that's when I walked down. I said, "There's 43,000 people 2 hours before we open the gate." And I'm going to give the guy his due. A lot of people knock him. We should have had a pay-per-view before he lost it when he wrestled Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
Hogan, we wanted to blow it, have one big blow against Vince, one more last one. We thought we had him on the ropes, right? But he did the alley rope-a-dope. He got us, okay? I said, "I'm going to cut my nose off and spite my face. I'm blowing the biggest pay-per-view, but I think I got him. I think this is it." I went to Hogan and I said, "Listen, everybody from anybody that drives you, your limo driver, your merchandise, your personal assistant, your agent, your lawyer, is going to say, 'I'm out of my mind. You're Hulk Hogan.'" I said, "The reason why I'm asking you to do this is you are Hulk Hogan." I said, "If he tackles you and jackhammers you and goes over you as a heel, it will start a precedent that the torch is passed, right?"
Yes.
But I said, "I'm not going to allow that torch to be passed all the way. What I'm going to do is reinvent you like you used to work in Japan. Scratching,
Yep.
kicking guys, gone crazy. That he lost almost, I might have been ahead of my time. I said, I want you to say, 'I've lost my precious. I've lost my precious.'" You know?
Yeah.
But I read Tolkien before, so I get a lot of shit from books and movies and used to MTV. I said, "You want to say you lost your precious where you've gone mad and you've beaten people up?" I said, "The next time we're going to have a huge pay-per-view, and who knows what could happen." In my head, I had that finish for Hogan where he missed, right?
Okay.
Then it's Ali Frazier 3.
Wow, and then you got the big money. They're 1-1.
They're 1-1.
And for a lot of people that watch these, they know how Hogan worked in Japan as opposed to the States. You know, they talk even '93 when he wrestled Muta in Japan. People were like, "Holy shit, how did he pull that out?" Like, he always had that in him, but he was always just marketed as, the pose, the boot, leg drop, let's go home.
And that's what they wanted at the time. They wanted a superhero.
Yep.
He just came off the Rocky movie. The stars were aligned. Vince wanted to be in the cartoon business. Hogan, to this day, still sold more marketable things than anybody. He had 126 pieces of merchandise.
Right, licensed merchandise.
So I said, and I saw him work with Inoki.
Yes.
Well, that was incredible. Inoki.
I was going to say, you're probably thinking the same thing I am. The axe bomber off the apron. And, Inoki was, God over there in the finals of that IWGP tournament. And, Inoki went to the hospital and everything like that. Right. He was vicious.
I mean, I had envisioned doing vignettes with Hogan in a chair, and this to me was always spooky to me as a kid. We had them around the house at Christmas time. You ever see when you put the little birthday candles in the chimes that spin?
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
You know how spooky that sounds sometimes? Yeah. I wanted to have 2 of those in a dim lit thing and just be talking to myself. I'm the greatest athlete of all times. I'm the greatest professional wrestler of all times. This couldn't happen to me. And I wanted to be in a room, like a CNN room, but it was like a hotel room where he had built these television programs.
Oh my goodness, yeah, and he's watching them.
And he's watching them the tackle all the time.
Yeah.
And he's saying, he didn't do that to me. He could, and that music going ting, 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 because his brain's going ting, 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 ting. And it would have drawn. It would have drawn big.
Now, did you get resistance from him, or did you get resistance from More of The Office.
Yeah, more of The Office. They didn't see that. They thought that had taken a step beyond that the NWO was so cool. They had forgotten at the time the NWO were when they attacked in Orlando.
Yeah.
Okay. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash will tell you this. I said, whatever you do not use baseball bats on these guys. Are you getting this clear? Eric said you can't use baseball bats on these guys. Do I make myself clear? No baseball bats on these guys. You know, Disney got called. The police came out. They thought it was a shoot. We broke kayfabe. It was the Horsemen against the Dungeon of Doom. Jimmy Hart ran out and said, there's a shit going on. We came back as a joint company. You know, we were 8 of us together.
Yeah.
And we got our ass kicked by these guys, the terrorists that had invaded, right, with the baseball bats. I don't still know how they got them after I told them not to use them. But they thought at the time that not only were they the best heels, they were the best baby faces.
Right.
Okay.
They believed they were baby face and everybody else was a heel.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'll say this in Nash and Hall and Kidd's behalf. They were.
Yeah.
But Hogan could have been separated right there, that they could have been making fun of him, saying, oh, you want to go up to the room and watch the tackle again? How many times are we going to watch the tackle?
Right. Oh, egging him on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's go up. Hey, Hulk, what are you doing? Oh, I haven't seen that. Oh, you're figuring out a way to get away from the tackle. That's good. And the kid, you know, he had the camera. He had the camera. Well, let me get it closer on that for you, Hulk. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's stirring the shit.
And the young people that liked Hall, Nash, and the Kid would say, oh, aren't those guys cool? What shit disturbers they are. And the people would say, boy, they really don't like Hogan.
Yeah.
And then it could put a seed in their heads that once I got past Hogan, Goldberg 3, why couldn't I have Goldberg, Hogan against Nash and Hall?
Right?
You know?
Wow.
But...
No, I know we're still going forward.
Yeah.
How much resistance, you know, when you... what year do you get basically the top booking spot? Because I know it went through so many changes from 89 on.
I got it when we went to Germany. We went to Germany and Hogan was selling out. Mm-hmm. I mean, he hadn't been to Germany, and it was very strange because we went where Hitler gave his speeches, and I thought, my God, if I flash back, here's Hogan, and I had to go through the labyrinth that Hitler did so we wouldn't get a shot, and I get up on the little platform and watch it, and there's 15,000 people chanting, Hogan, Hogan. I'm flashing back to Heil, Heil. You know, I'm saying, whoa, it ain't too far of a stretch, you know.
Being a history guy, real quick, like when you go to Germany and stuff like that, isn't the idea of like you look around and be like, wow, this was only 60-some years ago. Like, how did this happen? And you want to ask people because they don't want to they don't want to talk about it until like the door closes and they all do this.
Yeah.
Well, my great grandfather, you know, we were believed to. I'm like, what, you know, what mind control?
What it was, and again, going back, Hitler was made for movies. He was an actor.
Yeah.
You know, he practiced propaganda.
Yeah.
He also had great Nazi sympathizers. Old man Kennedy, Joe Kennedy, was a Nazi sympathizer, and he was the ambassador to England, and they threw him out, okay? Lindbergh, the biggest hero we ever had at the time, Nazi sympathizer. King Edward, who abducted the throne, Nazi sympathizer.
Yep.
There was a lot of people that were Nazi. They used to fill up Madison Square Garden with the Bond, you know, the American Nazi Party. Yep. So there wasn't, you know, 60 years...
It wasn't just a minority of people in Germany. Yeah, it was. No, it was big.
Yeah, it was huge.
Italy was sympathizers.
Yeah. I mean, I always say this, I was raised Irish Catholic, okay? The Vatican was never bombed, neither was Rome.
Right.
And there was a huge ghetto of Jewish people in Rome, okay?
Right.
All the big wigs got over to South America on Vatican passports.
Right.
The Vatican was choosing the lesser of two evils. They'd rather fascism than communism. And if you look in World War One, Hitler, Catholic.
Right.
Mussolini, a Catholic. Stalin was raised a Catholic and then dropped the religion.
Right.
Franco, who didn't come in the war, but that's where it started,
Yep.
really,
Yep.
a Catholic. Salazar in Portugal, a Catholic. All these people, they said it's better to have them than have communism, because communism, people don't think sometimes about this. Is there a country where the Methodists have their own country? Is there a country where Lutherans have their own?
Yeah.
Well, they get their own. I've been to the Vatican twice.
Yeah.
You know what my first thought was when I went in the Vatican? How would you insure this place? With all the, the gold and all the famous works are on? I mean, so we're getting off the thing, but
We'll get back on it.
but what happens is it's easy to see how people start to say, "Oh, that's my constitutional rights," and they've never read it.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
The manipulation game.
yeah.
So you're in Germany with and Hogan's there selling out.
Yeah.
So in this early '95.
This was '94. He
Okay.
came to me and said, he was getting pressure to drop the strap. It was ridiculous. We were drowning with him. He'd just come over.
Who did they want him to drop the strap to?
He didn't. They didn't want him. There was one guy that had some power.
Okay.
Okay. And I said, he was on me. Finally, I went to Hulk and I said, listen, there's a guy. He said, I know who it is. I said, you better get somebody to talk to Barnett. He said, well, I've talked to Barnett already. And he said, they're going to make a change. Because this guy was in the office. I said, well, who are you going to get? He said, you. He said, do you think you can do it? I said, I can get you the promised land. I'm not going to tell you I'm going to get there with you, but I'll get you the promised land, because I think if we go head to head with them and give them a different product, he's selling Lincoln Continentals, we're going to sell Harley Davidsons.
Right.
We're going to be hipper, slicker, and newer.
Right.
And it wasn't by chance that the first match on Nitro was Lager
and Pillman. Yeah.
It was not a chance, because at that time the sheet said I was too much kayfabe, too much behind the times. Yeah, I let them think that, but I knew as soon as I brought the Japanese guy, I brought him Nirvana.
Yeah.
To the United States. I brought them the guy they wanted to see more than Hogan.
Right.
So then, I just knew we had them then, and then everything, I like to say that I was smart, but everything snowballed. Guys came in and overachieved. They had incredible matches. I brought the, Conan came in.
Yeah.
I had known Conan. He said, I think if you bring the luchadors in, it's a different take. I brought the luchadors in. It was a different take. I had the NWO. I had the Four Horsemen. I had Sting. I had Luger. I had Flair. I had Vader. And I knew we had them one night in Canton, Ohio, when we had a riot. And the riot was between the WCW fans and the NWO fans.
Wow.
They were fighting in the audience. I said, we got it now. We got both sides.
Yeah.
They're going to come. And, and I got to give the Kevin and Scott and the Kid, and a lot of people forget the Kid. The Kid was a very intricate part. he was the worker.
Yeah, he was an amazing worker. And the guy that could take the pin when you needed him to.
Yeah. And they exceeded what I thought was going to happen. It blew up. And I look back and I say, well, how did this blow up? It ended up being a lawsuit for us against WWE because when they came in, I didn't use their names. I never called them Diesel.
Right.
I never called them Razor Ramon. I never called them X-Pac. It was like...
You left it up for the people to decide. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the people thought, hey, maybe this is an invasion. And then at the Battle of the Beach, when Hogan turned heel, it was an invasion to the people. The NWO. And they made the mistake, which, in hindsight, they thought they were doing the right thing when they had the Hulkster, Mean Gene, and the Nacho Man.
Yeah.
They were promoting our people in a bad light, while I was promoting his people in a good light.
Right. Now, do you think that was like, because Vince would never do that before. He would never even acknowledge the competition for years. No. Do you think that was a sign, you being in the office, when you see that, you're like, I got him. It
wasn't that I said I got him. I said somebody gave him this idea, and he said, let's run it and see how it does. But once it did, TV started turning.
Yeah.
You started clicking. And then if they clicked over and they saw an Eddie Guerrero against the Dean Malenko match, it stayed. And then the next match, there'd be maybe a Sting and Flair return. Well, you're not going to turn that. I mean, if I wanted to book and get a 5-0, I just throw that out.
Yeah.
It was always that for me. And
that was your go-to.
Yeah. So I think that everything fell into place. And I was telling Chris today, do you remember when you went into a Walmart or a Kmart, there was nothing but wrestling shirts and everybody was wearing them?
Everybody's wearing them. Yeah.
Everybody's wearing them. You never see them now except when you go to an independent show. So.
And I was going to say, at that time, it was the first time I heard the phrase water cooler talk.
Yeah.
Monday morning or Tuesday morning, you would go to the, people would go to the office and be like, man, did you see what happened on Raw and Nitro? Like, it was once again cool to be a wrestling fan.
It was very cool to be a wrestling fan. And it was cool on colleges, they had Nitro and WAP nights where they got a keg of beer and sat and flipped the channels.
Yeah.
Or had both of them run at the same time. We took the stigma out of being a wrestling fan away. They knew we were working, or they thought 98% of us were working. Goldberg wasn't. And there were things where we had the NWO drop leaflets from the ceiling.
Yes.
We had
Propaganda.
limos pulled up. We just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And those guys were probably the only guys that could push the envelope, because I was realized I was on a slippery slope, and I would give them a line, and they would always go past the line.
Mm-hmm.
So I would move the line if I didn't hear anything.
Right.
And I said, don't go past this line. And they'd go past the line, and it was almost a game with us, you know what I mean?
Did you like that? Like, that they would think for themselves, right?
I wanted guys to say, if he says, like the bat, when I said don't use the bat, and they used the bat, I said, these guys know how to draw money.
Now, with something like that, now I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Does that come from what you were doing in Florida? Because wrestling was very good versus evil, but never you really got to see a guy that, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. You never mentioned the word devil, right?
I never did in my life.
It was always
Abu-Dhabi.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you created, when you went to Florida, you created this new persona that people would be like, that's the devil. And then all these years later to realize that you've never called yourself the devil at all. It was just something that everybody, that's the devil. But you would push the envelope. We were talking before we turned the camera on of how even back 83, 84, where you brought Mike Davis out, who was an underneath guy,
Right,
you know, a good talent, young guy.
Right.
And you created, he was Dusty Rhodes. And even on television, you said, because your name is Virgil Runnels, you are a fraud to these, you're like, and those people, like, even know that okay, this is his real name, but no, he's Dusty Rhodes. And then even I want to say early '87 when you had finally turned babyface, you were calling out for Bob Windham,
right?
You know, like, and you know, at first people would think like, oh, Barry Windham. Then you were like, no, Bobby Jack Windham, and the people were like, that's Black Jack Mulligan's real name. And how did that start? Because you know, it'll parlay into what you were doing with Hall and Nash. Was that stuff that you and Eddie and Dusty came up with, or is that something you said, you know, let me see, here's the line, let me take a step over and see how far I can go?
Yeah, I would run some ideas by Eddie, and he would shake his head, and you know, he was from a different generation, and he would say, "You gotta be shitting me," and I'd say, "Yeah, of course I am," you know. And then I'd back it off, right?
Because before this, you know, Florida's just so used to Jack Briscoe and Dory Funk Jr. and Harley and you know, and Dusty and you know, very same formula over and over and over again. And this is where it changes. And
I think on my part, it was one interview changed the whole thing. I was going to start and again, MTV's in its infancy, okay? Now, I'm doing subliminal things that aren't too subliminal in today's day and age. I'm putting little dark shadows like I haven't slept, right?
Yeah.
People know now what it would be, right? And I'd be saying, I see that brown LTD follow me, you know, paranoia, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would be pushing the envelope, but Dusty cut an interview one week about the American dream. I came back the following week and said, do you believe that liar? What American dream? He's driving a big car. He's got a big house. What do you got? You got 3 kids. You're barely hanging on to your job. Your electricity was turned off 2 weeks. We're in wars that we never win. There's no such thing as American dream. I said, maybe in your father's day they were the greatest generation of all times, but we're weak underbellied and we listen to people like him and he's your idol? I said, you better get with it. This country's going to be overrun by people like me. You're going to have to listen to me tell you what's right.
Right.
And that's how it started, and then the makeup, and then it went. And it wasn't like I started. I always tell people this. They said, how could you get away with it? It's because I started it from A.
Right. You didn't start at L. Yeah.
I started at A, and they saw the story progress. It was like watching a soap opera. What's he going to do? How bad? And I did. I think if it wasn't the first, it was one of the first when I conjured Mark Malone from the sea. Right? It was full moon.
Yeah, that's a big YouTube thing, and I think High Spot shows it. That today is still so creepy. You know, it just and
and it worked right because it was a full moon, and we didn't know it that night. Yeah. And I had the greatest talker in the business, King Curtis, narrating over it, and there's Lewin, who at the time was the most jacked person in the world, and he comes out, the eyes rolling like this. I mean, it scared me, and I had picked one person else besides myself, a very petite girl.
Right.
And it looked like, and when we cut, it was like, why was she there? What were they going to do to that girl? She was so small.
Wow.
You know, I
almost like a sacrifice or
we're
rape.
We used to say I used to do an interview with Marky saying, well, last night we feasted and rejoiced, you know, and I did the thing and rejoiced. So it was, hey, these sexual deviants, what the fuck's going on here? Is this a cult coming in, you know?
And that was the thing, you were allowing the people to create their own.
You brought something up that I never said devil, and I never did. The Habudadeen, where I got that was from, and you'll appreciate this, I think. Were you a kid? Did you have a boogeyman?
Yeah. Sure did.
You think your boogeyman looked like my boogeyman?
No, absolutely not.
He was bigger,
yes,
boogeyman, than my boogeyman.
Yeah.
Everybody has a boogeyman, But every boogeyman, and that's why I never brought him out. Because every boogeyman, no matter who I brought out, I could have brought Goldberg out if he was 9 feet tall. It wouldn't lived up to the expectation. Right. What they built in their head of the boogeyman was, that guy's talking to the Buddha Dean. He must be a devil or something. The Buddha Dean really is a fertility god for the Buddhists. The Hindus, rather.
Yeah,
the Hindus.
Yeah.
So it was like, I started to play on that was, I'm talking to the biggest fear as a child. I'm going back to the womb almost, where they popped out of the womb and the lights went out for the first time and they got scared.
Yeah.
That's how that was.
Now, with stuff like that, did you nowadays with everything so entertainment, guys, myself included, trying to evolve and stuff like that. I'm given hey, we'd like your character or persona to go in this direction, and I will literally research. Case in point, 3 years ago, I've been a heel, Ring of Honor for years. I'm just an evil, awful person.
Right.
But I start losing control because I'm a manipulator. I start losing control of Kevin Steen, and now I can't control him. And he loses a loser leaves town match, and I'm now I'm lost because not only I couldn't manipulate him any longer, I finally looked around, and nobody liked me. I was 17 years in, and I did not cement the legend that I thought I was. And I went into this I have to become pure and evil, and basically I had my last drink, and they had, it was like a wrestling I was in rehab, but for wrestling I wouldn't try to break a rule, but I literally went to AA meetings and sat there and would try to be like, okay, why would that guy, this guy's real life shit that he's saying, and I'm thinking, man, how am I going to use this so it can be different than what everybody else was doing? And in reality, it got to the point where, I always say, it was the most unsuccessful babyface turn ever because it was built that way. Because at the end of the day, I really have that evilness in me, and people were like, "You're just losing matches in this." They stopped believing in me because they wanted that evilness out. But then when I turned back, I would read stuff on serial killers, but not like the guy that would go into the mall and kill somebody. It was the guy like a Bundy or something like that, would look like a normal person that would wear a suit and a thing, and he would just manipulate everybody else. And then it ended up being, there was a television show last season called The Following.
Oh, I watch it all the time.
It's amazing, right?
It's amazing.
Yeah. He is a serial killer.
We're everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
That scared the piss out of me.
Right? And that was the mentality.
Yeah.
Now, in 83, 84, television's not that. What are you reading books and thinking, how can I be so different than what they're doing in New York or St. Louis or Charlotte?
See, I had been lucky that Mark was my partner, so I traveled all over the world. I went Singapore, I went to Malaysia, I went to Hong Kong. I'm a historian, so I like history. I'll tell you a real quick joke. I go to this Buddhist cave 2,500 years before Christ, okay? Mm-hmm. As you're walking through the labyrinth, there's all these little gods, right? Mm-hmm. Demigods, gods. I come into this big, huge opening, and there's a Sifu. He's the wise man, right? He's sitting there, no shirt on, looks like Curtis with a drum like this, but he had the blue doctor pants on, right? Yeah. And I said, I found the guy. He's going to tell me the meaning of life. I found it. I had fasted. I did some shit. I fasted. I did some tea with them, and I'm walking. Right? I'm walking the steps. These guys got I don't know if you've ever seen where they put the bowling balls in the back.
Yes.
I didn't do that, but I'm walking with them. One guy got a sword in his mouth. I'm saying, you want to try it? So nah, I don't think I've had enough tea. So I walk in. I see the guy, and I said, This is the answer I'm going to get. As I turned the wooden bench that he's built, there's an electric fan and a Dr. Pepper. And I said, this is all bullshit.
Yeah.
It's bullshit. I said, anybody will buy into anything if it's polished up and you know anything about anything. Mm-hmm. And what you talk about, studying things. I went to a couple of meetings too, okay? And I listened to these guys talk, and you probably saw the same thing. It's almost they're proud that they got 7 DUIs and 12 wrecks, and their life was a ball of shit, but now they're out of it. But they're smoking 9 packs of cigarettes and drinking a pot of coffee. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
they were trying to put over what they've done.
Yeah. It's like, well, one would stand up and say, "Well, that's nothing. I had 9 DUIs." I was saying so. And this is the funny thing. I had this friend that I told him I wanted to go and see what it's like. Now, he has a dear friend, and it's Alcoholic Anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
So I just happened to see him the other day, and it's been a year since I saw both of them. I said, "How's Olaf doing?" He says, "Olaf's drinking again and smoking dope." And I said, "Isn't this Alcoholic Anonymous? You're not supposed to tell me that?" He said, "Oh, yeah." It's like he didn't understand. So then I read their book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bill, you know how he got off the alcohol? Belladonna, a drug. He went from
so just replaced,
they replaced one drug with another drug. And if you really read the book, it's a racist book. It's for white, middle class Christians.
Right.
You know, it's a real. To me, I read it and I said, you know, it's that like. I hope I'm not offending anybody. Like it's like Scientology.
Yeah.
Anybody can sell anybody anything. If a guy says, if you want to be a millionaire, develop a religion and sell it to people. That's what L. Ron Hubbard did, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, so I'm saying...
All mind manipulation.
Yeah, it's the same thing as when I turned around, here's the Sifu who's going to give me the meaning of life, why I'm here, why I'm a Caucasian, why my parents had me at the time they did. He's drinking a Dr. Pepper. Who knows? Might have had some vodka in it too, you know. Yeah. And he probably been drinking the tea and smoking some opium, you know. I mean, I thought, wow, everybody's looking for something, and in their mind they create something bigger than it is.
Right. Because they don't want to accept reality, right?
Yeah. And I got another statement I always say, and it usually is true. Sometimes it's not. Unfortunately, if it's not, it's usually bad. Anticipation is greater than reality. I mean, you could find, we'll say, the most beautiful woman in the world. You bring her up here, she takes her, undresses. There's going to be a flaw.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the anticipation is greater than reality unless something bad happens. It's like, and the other thing is, we anticipate, oh, Jesus, I got a speeding ticket. Oh, when I go to court, boy, this is going to be shit. They're going to take my license away. They're going to hammer me. You lose sleep over it. You go to court. These people have looked at these tickets all day, right?
Yeah.
They look at it and they say, Steve, you were doing a 65 and a 58. Okay. Officer, what do you think? Well, he was very polite. He worked with us. Okay, I'll knock it down. 60 over 55, pay a $50 fine.
Yeah.
We always, because as children were told, don't climb that tree, you're going to break your arm. Don't put your hand on the stove, you're going to burn yourself. It's no, 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 and negative, 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 you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we fall into that mode, and getting back to, you know, the wrestling part is we just expect it to be bad. You know what I mean? The character to be bad because that's all we know.
Yes.
That's all we know.
Now, when you're doing this, are you thinking like the more I manipulate the people, the more they're going to just believe in Dusty? You know, because you guys would, I mean, Dusty had a supporting cast of baby faces, but Dusty was always the target. You know, because was it because he was what these wrestling fans wanted to be?
Yeah.
And you were trying to prove that if I destroy your God, you're going to listen to the voice of reason.
Right.
And do you believe, I believe this, but I know you've done so much more than me. Do you believe that effective heel always believes in his heart that he's the baby face and everybody else is wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that you'll do anything necessary to make those people believe your way.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Hitler. Do you think like Hitler woke up every morning and said, "I'm the greatest heel in the entire world"?
No.
I Osama bin Laden, all these people, and people don't want to hear that, but I'm like, I don't think anybody wakes up and goes, "I'm a real dick today." You know, they say, "I'm going to show all these people that the way we think is the way."
Absolutely. I mean, you can go on and cut up. You know, you can dissect any religion. Okay. Every religion's different, but the basic premise is you're going to live forever.
Yes.
Okay. Some of them 144,000, only 144,000 go.
Yes.
That's predetermined. You can be a prick and you're going to go, right? But where you're going with that is the Hitler thing. I don't think people wake up and say, "I'm a motherfucker."
Yep.
You know what I mean? I'm a piece of shit. I'm a motherfucker. I'm going to change my role. It's that they've gone down this path and they can't get back. They can't make the U-turn again. They just keep on going because as they get more powerful, the people then that are with them are getting power too, right?
Yes.
So they want to rub
feeding,
more and feeding, and they get power, and that's what happens is they start feeding people and getting power. You're getting back to the Dusty thing. Dusty, for me, they believed in him so much. I never heard one fan say, "Dusty's fat."
Right.
I never heard one fan ever say, "Dusty's fat." Now, Dusty was a chubby, right? I never heard any fan, but you said, how did I get to there?
Yeah.
The thing is, if you want to keep a secret, you don't tell a wrestler, right? You don't tell a wrestler. You know, wrestlers this is between me and you, Steve, right? Okay. I used to go in, and we'd have different, you know, I'm from the Northeast, you're from the Northeast. There were guys from, and this is not belittling anybody from the South because I live in the South half the year. Some of the guys that were in the business from the South were rural, church-going guys, okay? And that was in the days that the heels dressed with heels and babyface dressed with babyfaces. And I would pick out a Southern heel and I'd sit across from him and I would just stare at him. And I'd chew tobacco and stare at him. And I'd say to Mark, you know, are we really going to go to that house tonight? I said, I don't, you know, last time was a little bit etchy, sketchy. And Mark was smart. He'd say, we're okay. No one's going to know. We'll go over. And I'd chew tobacco and I'd spit it in the can, put it down, and I would walk by them and they would freeze. And they would tell people, okay, that the guy's the real deal. The other thing was, I went everywhere in my robe. I go shopping in my robe.
Wow. I was going to ask you about that.
Me and Mark would drive down the interstates. Cops would pull us over because they knew who we were.
Right.
And they said, we just want to see if it was you two. And we'd get away doing 90 miles an hour talking to them, you know. Yeah, anything, you guys ever need us, you know, if you're ever pulled over and get a guy pulled over, we'll help you. Oh, thanks, guys, go ahead. I mean, we went, and people say, there's something wrong with these two if they're wearing their robe. They believe in their gimmick, you know?
Right.
And the thing is, I used to watch the matches from behind the curtain. I would never let anybody see me until I went to the ring and came home.
Right.
Okay? I didn't stop for beer where the guys stopped for beer. If I was going to buy beer, I'd just go down the road. It wasn't that I didn't want to associate. The fans go where the guys go.
Right.
I didn't want anybody to see the magic trick unless they paid for it.
Right, which is so smart. Now, going back to that, now Florida is, you're in the state of Florida. It's not like WCW where you're different city every week.
Right.
You know, you're going town to town, driving. You know, Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Sarasota. I mean, this is 7 days, basically 7 days a week and stuff like that. So you're living in Florida.
Right.
How do you live? Because Championship Wrestling from Florida is a high-rated show.
Right.
People know like who you guys are.
Right.
Like, how did you guys get away with
Doing it?
having a life outside of?
Well, we didn't have much of a life. I mean, me and Marky kind of lived in a fishbowl. We partied together. Some close friends would come over. We partied together. Occasionally, we would go out, but on a very rare occasion, and try to be as incognito as we could be. But I would go like into the gym sometimes when I knew the regulars weren't in.
Yeah.
And I'd just go in with Mark with the robe on and take it off, and I'd say, I'm going shoeless for the summer. Who's following me? And the people, no one wanted to look at me. You know, they're saying, what did he say? You know, and I'd say, if no one heard me, I'm going shoeless. Do you want to take your shoes off? Let's all go shoeless for the summer. Let's step on the burning sands. And, you know, there's no sand out there in Florida. It's cement, right? Yeah. And the people say, well, God, you know. I think one of the biggest compliments I ever got in my life, Kevin Nash told me that a bunch of the guys from the WWE bought the match with me and Pillman to see the fight, you know, when I Pillman the Booker Man.
Yeah.
To this day, not many people know if it was a work, a shoot, or whatever it was, but they bought it because it was presented that way.
Right.
You know? Whether it was or not, it didn't matter, because the outcome didn't matter because Brian left, you know, and he was a very smart guy. And one of the things I always say about Brian Pillman, Brian was a fabulous performer, but he was a better brain. If Brian had lived, the wrestling business lost an incredible booker. He would have, I mean,
really?
He called me up one day and he had the greatest idea in the world, and I said, Brian, I don't know if we could do it, the corporation, meaning Turner, if they'd fire you. I said, do I like the idea? I love the idea. He was going to go, when the Bengals were hot,
Yeah.
he was going to go to a Bengals game. You know, he got sidelined, you know, he
Yeah.
was on the sideline. He was going to go take a big 8-foot chain with all these padlocks and padlock himself to the goalpost.
On TV.
On TV. Now, how are they going to explain that the game is stopped? What, are they not going to show him?
Yeah.
Huh?
And a guy that has history with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, and they're not going to show him screaming like a madman?
Now, I'm going to jump forward
Yeah.
now. Brian, the Brian Pillman transformation is still, people talk about it to this day.
Right.
How a guy that was 92 comes in, you know, great story. You know, had so many surgeries. He goes with the heart, comes in. He's flying Brian, white meat baby face, and then slowly he starts developing this almost like he's
Psychotic.
yeah, and like, but he would play that in the locker room too, right?
Absolutely. And Brian once told me, he said, how did you get that character over? I said, because I picked out guys that I knew would buy into it.
Yeah.
And he started it, and I mean, he was so convincing. I remember one time we went on a tour to Germany. Hogan was on a tour. We went to the smaller towns. The only time they saw Pillman, when he got on the bus, he would lay down on the bus, sleep on the bus, get to the building, sleep, go to his match, work his match, go back to the bus and slept. No one saw him. Then people were coming to me, right? I was in on it.
Right.
But people.
But you're the booker, so yeah.
So guys would be coming saying, "Hey, there's something wrong with Brian.
Yeah.
Is he depressed? Is there something else?" I said, "Hey, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't get a degree hanging on my wall. Why don't you ask him, or take him out for a drink, or take him out for pizza, do something?" You know, he would just lay there, look at guys. And Brian Brian played that role better than anybody's ever played it.
I totally agree. And it's unfortunate to say, but like, how good would he have been 98, 99? You know, even with the ankle being messed up, just as a character, you know, and it's still one of those like, holy shit, like when he passed away, it was almost like if it was a movie, it was perfect because it left all those questions. But like, who came up with that? Was that something that like you thought like this would be the guy, or was that something he brought to you?
He had it going, and before I even went to him, he had started it, and him and I were sitting down one day, and I said, "You hit on it, you got it." And he said, "What do you mean I got it?" I said, "You got it. You know, I don't have to go any further. You got it." He said, "Do you think so?" I said, "Absolutely." I said, we were on stage at the time. I said, everybody down there is buzzing. They think you're insane. I said, you got it. You know what I mean? And, you know.
Now, were you the one that sent him to ECW, or was he not under contract? I mean, this is something that, you know, because this will go back, you know, once you give me that answer, then I got to ask you one other.
Okay.
Yeah, because he shows up in EC, you know, he's WCW, but was he suspended, or he just done the Booker Man? And he shows up at the ECW arena the next week. Because he suckers New Jack into this whole thing, too.
This is how smart Brian was. The only other person that knew was Eric.
Yeah.
His contract was over, but we paid him, okay? Because we were going to give him a bump.
Mm-hmm.
So they said to me, how can we keep him relevant if he's not on TV? I said, Paul E. will take him.
Right.
So I called Paul. I was friends with Paul.
Right. Yeah. And you guys, you know, you were one of the real ECW originals. You know, you were there from the beginning. Yeah.
And I started Paul.
Yes.
Gave him the phone. So I said, Paul, Brian Pillman wants to go. He was getting paid by us.
Yeah.
He was getting paid by Paul. And he was getting subsidized by Vince.
Wow. Yeah, because, you know, Vince is...
So he got 3 paychecks.
Now, when this is all going on with Brian, and he's negotiating with Vince all the time, are you thinking, shit, we have this thing? Or are you thinking, this guy's a genius? You know, being one of the boys, you got to be thinking, he's a genius. Being an office guy, you're thinking, shit. You know,
here's what I thought. I thought, and this is, I think I thought this, maybe time dulls your memory, but I thought, good for him.
Yeah.
I thought, good for him, he got us. I said, he got me, and good for him, he got us all. And my admiration for him even soared because I said, do you know what he's going to create? And then everybody forgets this. He shows up with a gun.
Yeah.
Shows up with a gun and with the hottest babyface / heel, right? And you don't know what happens, right? You had to tune in.
Yeah.
Well, that took a lot of balls to talk somebody into doing that. And I've heard a lot of people say that was a stupid thing. Well, that was such a flashpoint. Everybody talked about it. They either hated it or loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't bad. You know what I mean? You either hated it or loved it. So he was on the cutting edge, and I think Brian knew that wrestling was evolving faster than it could take place, Steve. Yeah. And he thought, well, and I also think you made a very valid point. His ankle had been broken.
Yeah.
He can't work like he used to. So now he has to use his mind.
Yes.
He's sitting there. So he's figuring out how I can go for a chair, and rather than hit somebody, the attempt is going to be greater than me hitting them.
Yeah.
And he was that passionate about the business too. I thought he was a brilliant.
Yeah.
Guy.
Wow. All that stuff right there was so brilliant, and it was stuff that, you know, because now people are getting smart to wrestling. The internet's becoming, you know, the sensation. So people know the secrets are on there. But like you would even read, it's on the internet how you and Brian aren't getting along. There's
Right.
problems in the office, and
Right.
that these matches are because you're known as the tough guy that'll beat up the guys like shit. Like no one wants to work with Brian, so Kevin's got to come out and do it. And yeah, they were that was just a crazy time where people could believe in like, okay, that's not that, and that's not. Man, but Kevin Sullivan, Brian Pillman, they really hate each other.
Yeah.
That's in. I think that's one of the things that wrestling misses today. And I know it's entertainment. I understand everything evolves, but it's that true personal conflict that you believe that. Oh, if he's my employee, like because it was pretty much said
Right.
that you were the producer, but. They were saying it, but you weren't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like they left it to the imagination because they don't know who's right and what.
Right.
That you had to take it into your own hands. That this guy's getting out of hand, and I'm an evil guy. Like I'll stoop to his level to, and there's personal conflicts. I believe draw money. You
Yeah.
and Dusty because you tapped into. What he was the American dream and what those people wanted, even though the reality was what you were saying.
Right.
This personal conflicts and the emotional investment ends up making the money, in the whole, Seth, how long have we been going?
About 1:45.
Right, an hour and 45 minutes. We've never used the word championship.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because you've spent a career of literally investing, keeping people emotionally invested in stories that end up drawing. I mean, that's one thing I want somebody to take out of this is like, holy shit, man, this guy did this, and then in '86 did this, and then in '91 did this, then '92 did this. It's an evolution that guys don't do anymore. Where Undertaker, people, why is the Undertaker still over and can still work once a year? Well, he evolves so much that, it's an attraction now. Hulk Hogan had been Hulk Hogan with the red and yellow for so long, but and I need to ask you, like, were you the one that said, "Hey, man, it's time. You have
He
to."
stayed at my house. His agent was on my couch begging him not to turn.
Wow.
I put him in the limo 15 minutes before the match. I wouldn't let him get anywhere near anybody.
Because somebody's gonna talk him out of it.
I had him in the
Holy
15
shit.
minutes at my house. We drove down 15 minutes before he hit the ring.
Now, were you frightened because it was a turning point.
His lawyer was calling, Henry Holmes, who was George
Yep.
Foreman's lawyer. His agent, Peter, I forget his last name, was sleeping on my couch. Everybody was telling me, you're going to lose endorsements. I came to him and said, this is a new beginning. You were a heel in Japan, and when you turn back, I said, the American people love to tear people down and then rebuild them.
Yeah.
I said, look at Ali.
Yeah.
They
Perfect
tore him
example.
down. And now if you look at Mike Tyson.
Yeah. Yeah. What a resurgence.
Yeah.
And now how do you first come up with, it's time to change Hogan? Was it that he was getting a little bit of, he was getting heat in buildings?
I'll tell you when I really cemented me. Mean Gene is probably the most underrated announcer of all times. We're in Chicago, and Hogan comes out, and he was wearing all black that night, in a black do-rag. And the people were booing him like I've never heard, right? And Gene said, you can see it's a solemn time here at the Chicago Stadium. The people are letting them know that they're sick of the NWO. He covered for Hogan.
Yep.
Hogan came back, shut the door. I said, can I talk to you for a minute? He said, yeah, come on in. I said, I want to talk to you alone. So he shut everybody out. I said, I want to show you something. I brought the tape in, right? I said, and he had a monitor. I put it in. I said, there was no solemn moment, brother. I said, say your prayers, take your vitamins. It's over.
Yeah.
It's
a new day.
These guys are over. I said, but if you switch, it's WWE against WCW, and you'll be the ringleader, and it's going to blow the roof off. Everybody tried to get to him, and I got to give Eric his due. Eric said, "Yeah, Kevin, you're right. I think it's time." But everybody else, I mean, I had this lawyer calling me. I had people that made dolls. I had the guys. One of the guys that makes us is Holly Davidson calling me. I had all these people. What are you, crazy? His Q is second to the Pope. I'm saying, yeah, but he ain't going to be drawing money doing this.
Yeah.
We need to switch him.
Wow. Now, if say he vetoes it, I'm not switching. Do you think the NWO is even close to getting this over as they did, or would fans would have turned on Hogan even more trying to fight the NWO?
Fans would have turned on Hogan, plus the NWO were so good at their job, they would have put the pressure on Hogan where he manipulated it himself to turn. They were brilliant. I mean, hey, when Kevin Nash and Scott Hall had the match with the two strippers, right? And they're selling.
Yep.
Come on, I mean, they were so cool. Hogan needed a refresher, and I hit him with the line we talked about earlier, Steve. I said, "Hey, you're a huge heel in Japan. You just go back doing that." I said, "You're going to turn back babyface.
Yeah.
It ain't like you're never going to be babyface again. Just do it." And I said, "You got the best vehicle to do with." I played up to his ego a little. I said, "These guys really need you here."
And it's true, though. Yeah.
I said, "Well, babyface loaded. I got Macho Man, I got Sting, I got Luger, I got the Steiners." I said, "You guys, you switch over there now." And I had Goldberg. I said, "Now we have a competitive thing inside the company."
Right.
So.
And you were doing the one thing that Vince didn't do, was Hogan had. Babyface, since he came back, he was a babyface until he left,
Right.
9 years, just babyface, red and yellow.
Right.
And, now you're competing with Vince, but now you've taken a guy that people know as a WWF wrestler.
Right.
He's, everything, and you have changed him. Yeah, so do you believe that one of the reasons that Hogan was getting booed in WCW before he turned was that a lot of the WCW fans always saw him as a WWF wrestler?
Well, what I think had happened was wrestling fans had changed to the ultimate anti-heroes. Those guys were so cool, right?
Yeah.
And there's Hulk trying to be with the red and yellow on, ripping his T-shirt, doing the same shtick that he's done for 9 years. Even though I was using Vince's top talent against them, they were Vince's creations, right?
Yes, yeah.
And let's not forget that I was using Vince's creations to the utmost for this company. That Hogan was, and I knew him well, he was uncomfortable how they were getting over.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he was eventually going to change. It might have taken him 2 more months, and maybe Nash
He would have.
and Hall getting a few beers in him and saying, "Hey, brother, we need you."
Yeah.
And that would have happened.
So you believe if it didn't happen then, he
Yeah,
would have
yeah.
maybe brought it to you, even
Yeah.
though you've brought it to him.
Right.
The manipulation
Right,
game.
right.
Yeah. And and it worked out so
Yeah.
well, because I think right then WCW it started to get that its own identity in '95 with Nitro.
Right.
Now you're competing with Raw, but you're not throwing the same guys out there. Now you have different tastes. You have a
Right.
buffet of you got the Japanese, you have the luchadors, you have old WWF guys, you still have Sting, Luger.
Right.
It became something for everybody. Then it's okay. Now what do we do? It was such a great time for wrestling too,
Yes.
because Vince, I don't want to say he went on autopilot, but after the steroids trial and stuff like that, it was every day was the same. It's okay.
Right.
We're on autopilot. Then all of a sudden it had to be, oh holy shit, we got to. And at a small point, Paulie's, he had it tapped into the...
It all blended together to
Yep.
push the product.
Yes.
And that's
and,
what
and the product evolved.
evolved. All three companies evolved because of it.
Now, 95. Okay, so you take over in late 94 and stuff like that. Now, 95, you know, the guys that Paulie are using, you know, now all of a sudden they're jumping to WCW.
Yeah.
Now, was that something you and Paulie came up with? Because I know being in ECW for 2 years, there was a limited resources when it came to making a living. You could make a living, but you knew at the end of the day that this was a stepping stone to go and make big money in WCW or WWF.
Right.
Did you open that door for like, hey, Paul, you know?
Here's what I would do. I would try not to get involved in that until the very end, right? I knew how talented they were.
Yeah.
I knew they're either going to go to Vince or us, okay?
Right.
But Eric got a hard on for Paul and said, get those guys, those 4 guys. I have 5 guys. So I said, okay. You know, so I'm thinking, they're going to go either the WCW or they're going to go to Vince.
Right.
So I called Paul and I said, Paul, I'm going to take the guys. They're going to get an offer. I just want to let you know first. I want them to give you the notice or I won't take them.
Right.
I want this to be done, handled right. And he said, oh, I knew they were going to go with you or Vince sooner or later.
And do you think that was a great, you know, because you did it to, hey, we're going to take them, but we want them to finish up.
Right.
And that always kept like that ECW fan from, they always hated Bischoff. Right. You never heard them talk bad about Kevin Sullivan because, one, they had seen you in that ECW arena. You know, no matter what, like if you wrestled in the ECW, you were one of those people.
Right.
But like, you know, even now with the internet coming and stuff like that, and they could read like Kevin Sullivan's the booker, and he's going to take these 5 or 6 guys and stuff like that. I mean, you took their top guys,
I did.
with the exception of Shane Douglas, who ended up going to Vince and not doing well. You know, he had to come back. Now, do you? It was great. Like that business just isn't done like that anymore. You know,
I just thought 2 years I owed it to Paul.
Yeah.
I was working in Japan. He gave me a job. I started Paul. I didn't want to be an asshole and just take the guys and tell them, hey, don't even give a notice, finish up. That wasn't how I was raised in the business. I think there's a proper way to do business. And I also knew that Paul needed to get his money out of the guys.
Yes.
I didn't want them to, and it wasn't going to hurt me if they did jobs for 6 weeks because I was going to put them back on TV and put them over.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter.
And to a majority of fans, they had never seen these guys before. I mean,
and you can remember, Steve, a lot of areas didn't get ECW.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
So
it was a Northeast company. Yeah.
Right. So it didn't matter. And I didn't want to hang Paul out to dry because if I was in Paul's position, I wouldn't want someone to do that to me.
Right.
So.
Now, do you believe that's like another thing that's missing nowadays? Like even if it's an in-between guy that calls Ring of Honor and says, "Hey, man, we want this guy and this guy, finish them up because we're gonna take him," or is it like, you know, now the company feels bad? Oh, this guy just put in his notice and he's leaving. He's gonna go to NXT for 2 years. Like, is there a simple way to do business again? Just to, you know,
I believe that. There are some guys in the WWE, Hunter being one of them, is a very compassionate guy.
Yeah, I believe
He's
that too.
A very compassionate guy. I had a dear friend of mine die this year. He called me. He had didn't have to call me. He called, his guy called and said, "Are you okay? Hunter wants to know." I said, "Well, it's a rough day for me today, but I'm okay." And I said, "I appreciate him calling." Hunter's a compassionate guy. I think if Hunter had his complete control, that he would call Ring of Honor because there are no threat to him.
Exactly.
And he would say, "Listen, I'm going to take these guys. When can you finish them up? Is 5 weeks, 6 weeks good enough?" And the guy in Ring of Honor should be smart enough to say, "Well, if you need it in 4 weeks, I can get it done because there are only 37 markets."
Yeah.
It creates respect with both guys, and who knows, maybe down the line somebody can help somebody else.
Right. It could be that time that there's the Curtis Hawkins, and Connor calls Ring of Honor and says, "We don't have anything for Curtis Hawkins, but we also don't want to release him.
Yeah.
Take him for eight weeks."
Yeah.
I've always believed that. How long do you book WCW before they start making changes? Now NWO's run hot, then Goldberg gets beat. It starts to go down. Is it when Russo and Ferrara come in?
Yeah. When Russo and Ferrara came in, I knew that was nothing but a pilot for rope opera.
Yeah.
I knew that's what it was, and I knew.
I like the term rope opera. Yeah.
I knew it was over. I mean, you can't go from comedy never draws.
Yeah.
And I knew it was over, and I got along with them, but I knew they didn't know what they were doing, and I said, the iceberg has hit the ship. We're going down. And then I knew I was through when Brad Siegel comes to me in a meeting and says, "What's your big idea that's going to get this company on track?" Right?
Ooh.
One idea. I said, my idea, and Goldberg was sitting there. I said, my idea is that I'm going to get him back up and running. I don't got any big idea. This was the idea. I didn't stop this idea. I said, then when I leave, they got Goldberg running from Booker T out of the ring as a heel.
Yeah.
It was almost done, in my mind, on purpose, okay? If you look back at WCW, what made it different, too, from Vince at that time, I didn't have any backstage shit. I don't like backstage shit.
Right.
There was all backstage. Are you and I gonna, if we're gonna wrestle one another, we're gonna run into each other backstage all the time?
Right.
The girl.
And why is there a camera there all the time?
And why is the girl there to interview us both backstage? Why aren't we out front?
Mm-hmm.
You do your interview, I do mine. It got to be where it got to be just a cookie cutter, and they got some credit up for Vince, and they said, we're going to do it this way. And I told them one time, and I think they actually think I called, Bill Bush thinks I called. Do you remember the time they had the Italian kids and they had the tomato sauce poured on them?
The Mamalukes.
Yeah, I said, you're going to have the Italian Defamation League call. The next morning they called.
And Mamalukes is a derogatory term.
Mamalukes means black.
Yeah.
Mamalukes is a tribe.
Yep.
In East Africa, the Mamalukes.
Yeah.
And that's what Sicilians call
I was going to say, Sicilians was,
yeah. So I said, you're going to get some shit over this. And they actually thought I called. And they said, did you call? I said, no, but I read. That Mamalukes and you pour tomato sauce on guys? What do you think? You're not going to hear from people power? There's going to be some old 82-year-old guy that came over in the boat that's pissed off. And that's what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Now, there's always the stories of that, like, TV, when Russo and Ferraro were there, TV wasn't ready. It would always be so last minute. Like, for you, like, once again, correct me if I'm wrong, for you being so creative, I could see you booking out, how far you want to go and then work back. Would go, this is where I want to be, and then work backwards, right?
Yeah, I'd book a year out, and usually maybe the first two matches a year later would be on. The last two, but they would change. But I'd book out. I got there one time, and I looked at Arn Anderson, and I said, this looks like a bad independent show.
Yeah.
It was just frightening to me. I said, how can you change things on the fly like this with, you had a guy get kidnapped, Ric Flair, and they buried him in the desert, and the next thing, nothing was said about it.
Yeah. So many loose ends.
Yeah.
No, it kills that mystique and believability.
Yeah, and they buried Rick. That was a shoot. They were burying him to kill his career.
Now, So when WCW ends, are you done right now at that point where you like you need a break, or did you want to go to Vince?
No, at that time I knew I was through.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew nothing I said I was going to be the guy that was going to take the fall. And I said, there's nothing I can do, so I'll just go home and do what I want to do. I opened the gym, and, that was the end of the story. But I knew that it wasn't going to be 5 years before they collapsed. You know what I mean? I just knew that they couldn't have gone from... It's like, again, a baseball. You got a lifetime 300 hitter, okay? Ted Williams hit 344. The year before he retired, he hit 254.
Yeah.
It's time to go.
Yep.
He's over. He's through. And that's how I saw it. And then I went down, I lived in the Keys part of the year, and I went down and started the gym, and that was it.
Enjoy life now?
Love your life, yeah.
Right. That's great. What do you believe? I'm a big one that Cornette taught me this, was you never get a second chance to make that first impression. So, TNA's been chugging along for, almost 12 years now. By the time this comes out, 12 years. And, Ring of Honor is what it is. It's just a television program for Sinclair Broadcasting.
Right.
But do you believe that... I don't think TNA would be the for a wrestling company to be on television now in a capacity of like a Spike TV or something like that, that they have to be absolutely 100% totally different than what Vince is putting out, because that people will always see right now, they're so programmed now that WCW's been gone for so long, is that WWE is the only game in town.
I have an expression, when people ask me that question, I said, what would Vince do?
Yeah.
Right? Because he's the standard bearer of the business. Well, you can't do what Vince does. So you better do this over here.
Yep.
And can it be done? Absolutely. How many people were here today?
Right, exactly. 2,000 people at Wrestle Kingdom.
And every one of them came to me and said, wrestling was better in your day. Of course it wasn't better in my day. But the grass was greener, the beer was colder, and the girls were prettier.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course.
You always believe,
Yeah.
and then, and I know this now that, wrestling for 20 years, people will be like, oh, ECW is the greatest thing ever. And I remember going, it was cool, it was great, but like, people would say, oh, what was great? Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling.
Yeah.
And I believe in the 80s, people would say, what was great?
Florida.
Yeah, Florida and stuff like that.
Paul knows that I've said this. All ECW was Florida Championship Wrestling brought to date with guys that were less talented.
Yeah.
One guy could only choke slam, right? Guys jumping off the roof. But he made it audience participation. It was the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
When he went to Tampa, they were drawing 200 people.
Yeah, exactly. Lauderdale was still,
Yeah.
I drew more with Terry Funk in an MLW than ECW ever did on a pay-per-view with and it always, that mind boggled me. A couple of guys, we're talking about ECW that came over to WCW that didn't. Public Enemy was the one that I always thought, like, Rocco was, years before as the Cheetah Kid was really good. Johnny was always just Johnny. Do you believe, like, they didn't get over as big as they were because Paul played to their strengths so much and hid those weaknesses? Do you believe, like, and you do it too as a booker, is success of a booker not only is to draw money, but is to find that talent to expose the strengths, hide as many weaknesses as possible, because once you expose those weaknesses, that guy's not going to draw money for you.
They came over, first of all, with a question mark of their background. Not Rocco, but Johnny.
Johnny, right.
Okay? But they're supposed to be hipsters, right? Didn't look hipsters to me.
No, not to a mass crowd.
No,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Rocco, I loved him.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He looked like an Italian with bad clothes on, right?
Yeah.
Johnny's very, very heavy. If they were younger and more athletic, and
like a PG-13, like Jamie Wolfe made it.
And they didn't have that for some reason, Eric had a stigma against Johnny. And if they didn't have that, they stole the van.
Yeah, I was gonna say the
Come
band
on.
probably
Yeah, the
didn't
van
win anything.
the van didn't make the best friends, and then, Bill DeMont rips the door off, and he's the only guy. He calls me one day and he says, "I can't come to the TV," and I said, "Why?" He says, "I'm drunk." I said, "Well, that's good enough for me. You told the truth. I'll see you tomorrow." And I hung up. I mean, they just kind of got together. And Eric didn't like that. They were like a little clique on their own.
Right.
And
It wasn't. They weren't corporate enough. Yeah. Once again, even though he got over a little bit, were you surprised that Sabu didn't explode in WCW, or was it knowing his uncle so well?
Sabu was sabotaged.
Really?
Yeah. Sabu was sabotaged.
Oh, see, I had so much expectation of comes in against Alex Wright, who I always thought was so underrated. And and then just quickly.
Sabu was sabotaged.
Oh, what a shame! You could have done a lot with Sabu.
Oh yeah. I mean,
because he was different.
I had his first match. I knew what the kid could do.
Yeah.
I mean, he was different. He was. Different wasn't the word. The kid was. Paul. One thing Paul could do is voice over shit, and he was good at that.
Yeah. He was so innovative at that time too. It was an underground television show, and an underground grunge was getting popular and stuff.
Right.
But I always thought like, wow, how did WCW miss the boat with Sabu?
Yeah.
And like he was one of those guys until I really got to know him. He was one of those guys that I'd always give the I don't know about this guy, man. He's difficult to get to know. Once you know him, he's great. But I mean, I worked with him in ECW for a year and a half. Hey, nothing.
Yeah.
It took a tour of an indie show for 3 days where we got stuck at an airport, and I'd be like, he'd ask something. I go, "Why didn't you ask me this 2 years ago?" He goes, "Well, I didn't have anything to say." I go, all right, but like he gave that persona, like maybe this guy's a little off, and. I definitely believe that in today's wrestling, whether it be entertainment or not, that mystique is still the same formula.
Yeah, it is, and he could have been a huge star.
Yeah. I believe so too. And what he gave to, it's a shame to see him walk, I believe that he should have made the big money, and you were in FMW with him in Japan and Sheik and stuff like that, and. Before I let you go, I'll let you go in a couple minutes. But Smoky Mountain, here's another way of Kevin Sullivan stays relevant no matter where he goes. Smoky Mountain, you take Kanemaru's arm and just. Kanemaru's a young boy at this time, Who did you talk him into it and say, "Hey, look," or did he say?
He said to me, "I'm going to cut my arm." I said, "Let me see the blade," and he shows me a surgical blade. I said, "You're going to cut your arm with this?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "I wouldn't, but if you're going to do it, go ahead and do it." He cut his arm. You could see the tendons. So what am I going to do? Pass out? So I stuck the spike in his arm. It was horrible. I mean, Arn made an interview afterwards. It was the worst thing he ever saw. It was a shoot. And then later on, I'm in Japan, and I do an angle with him where I throw a glass case in his face.
Yep. Yep.
And he said to me, "I'd like you to, Mrs. Sullivan, I'd like you to throw the glass face, please." I said, "You're asking me, of all people, to throw a glass case in your face?" I said, "You know you're going to be cut." He said, "Please, please, son, please." I said, "Wait a minute. If someone told me that Kevin Sullivan was going to throw a glass case in my face, I'd say, I'm going down the street." He said, "Please do it." I throw it. The office tells me to do it. I don't want to do it. I throw it. I told him, "Make sure your eyes are closed." He closed his eyes. He's got shards of glass all over his face, bleeding like a pig. And he comes up to me and, "Thank you very much. Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful." I'm thinking, whoa. Hope they don't ask me for the receipt on this one,
It's like he's buddy of mine. Like every time I go to Japan, you know,
Oh, please
I have
tell
dinner.
us.
I definitely will. But we had talked about stuff like this, and he goes, "Oh, Corey-san, all Japanese, some like Brody, some like Hanson, some like Harley Race, you know." He goes, "Me, I grew up. I like Kevin Sullivan. I think, maybe Cut Arm, best friend. Maybe Glass, best friend. Hero, yeah." I'm like, "Oh, wow." Yeah, and like to a lot of those FMW guys where, you know, a lot of the you know, they all loved Baba and Hinoki and Shiruda and Choshu as they're growing up. But in the back of their mind, they like Brody and Hanson and stuff like that. But it was like he was so into the Florida stuff and everything. And I thought, wow, these guys are just like us, you know, where we're watching their stuff. You know, here's this guy that all he wants to do is be the Japanese Kevin Sullivan. And I always thought that was so cool because, you know, he's such a funny guy too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was I wanted you to know that because you know, on my way home I'll stop at him and be like, I told Kevin Sullivan you said hi. Oh, please, I want to order video. Yeah.
Good.
But he would, like, every time I come over, he'd be, of course, I come to apartment, and it would be something you guys would do in FMW or the Smoky Mountain stuff. Yeah, he was just a great. So you own a gym in the Keys?
I just sold the gym.
Oh, I was gonna say to give yourself a plug real quick before, but hey, I just want to thank you. You know, it's been a fun 2 hours and stuff. And this was Old School with Kevin Sullivan. I'm Steve Corino, and we'll see you next time.